If you have ever tried learning English, or honestly, any new language at all, you probably know this exact, incredibly specific feeling.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to picture this. You've been studying for a few months. You sit down at your kitchen table with your workbook, maybe a cup of coffee, and you can read the English text in front of you. Perfectly fine.
Right. You're in the zone.
Totally in the zone.
Yeah.
You're writing out your emails, you're doing your practice sentences, and you feel entirely in control. The vocabulary is finally making sense. The grammar rules are actually clicking into place.
You're having that moment.
Yes, that wonderful moment where you think, wow, I'm really making progress. I'm getting this.
Yeah.
But then you step outside,
Oh, boy.
you walk into a coffee shop, or you get onto a Zoom call, and the moment a native speaker actually opens their mouth and speaks to you, that illusion of control just shatters.
It completely falls apart.
It really does. Instead of the neat, organized sentences you saw on the page, what you hear just sounds like this incredibly fast, aggressive, blurry stream of noises melting into each other.
It's an overwhelming sensation. You're standing there, and it just washes over you like a...
Like a wave.
Yeah.
Exactly. You might catch a random word here or there. Maybe you hear the word coffee or tomorrow, but the overall meaning just entirely escapes you.
Yeah, you get the pieces, but not the puzzle.
Right. And then that familiar panic sets in. Your heart beats a little faster. Your brain scrambles to translate the one word you did recognize.
And by the time you figured out what that single word meant, the person speaking is already 3 sentences ahead of you.
Which is the worst feeling.
Yeah.
You end up just giving them a blank smile and nodding, secretly hoping they didn't just ask you a direct question.
We have all been there.
It is such a universally frustrating, humbling experience. So if you were listening to this and nodding your head right now, remembering a time you felt that exact panic, I want to assure you right out of the gate, you are absolutely not alone. This is totally normal.
It is completely normal. And honestly, it's arguably the most common wall that learners hit. And there is a very sound physiological and psychological reason for it.
I'd love to hear that because it feels like a personal failure when it happens.
It's really not. Think about the difference between reading and listening. Reading and writing are paced entirely by the learner. You are in the driver's seat.
Right, I control the speed.
Exactly. If you come across a complicated sentence in a book, you can stop. You can reread it 5 times. You can pull out a dictionary. The paper isn't going anywhere. You control how fast you consume that information.
That makes sense.
But listening is paced entirely by the speaker. You are completely at the mercy of their speed, their specific pronunciation, their rhythm, their mood, and whatever background noise is happening in the room.
Which is a lot to process all at once.
It's a massive cognitive load. Sound waves hit your eardrum, and a millisecond later, they are gone forever. If you didn't catch it, it's just vanished. It is a completely different cognitive skill.
I really love that distinction. The paper isn't going anywhere, but the sound waves vanish. That really reframes why it feels so difficult.
Yeah.
And that brings us to exactly what we are going to be exploring in today's deep dive.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too. We are looking into a highly practical, really beginner-friendly guide titled 12 Ways to Improve Your English Listening Skills.
It's a fantastic resource.
It really is. Now, I know there's a huge temptation when you hit that wall we just described. You panic, and you think the solution is to throw money at the problem.
Oh, the magic bullet mentality.
Yes, you think you need to go out and buy some incredibly expensive, heavily marketed language software, or you need to quit your job and enroll in a grueling immersive language boot camp in London.
Right. People think they have to completely uproot their lives to learn.
Totally. But I was looking through this material, and what struck me is that it's not about that at all. There are no expensive tools here.
No, and that is the beauty of it. Improving your listening isn't about buying a $500 program. As the guide points out, it's actually about simple daily habits.
Which is such a relief.
It is. I want to be honest, though. Listening is notoriously one of the hardest, most demanding parts of language acquisition.
Why is that, neurologically speaking?
Well, it requires your brain to process acoustic phonetic sounds, translate those sounds into recognized words, apply grammatical rules to figure out how those words interact, and then extract the actual meaning.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And it has to do all of that in a fraction of a second, continuously, without stopping. It's an incredible workout for your brain. But the really encouraging truth is that with the right kind of targeted practice, progress doesn't take years. It can happen surprisingly fast.
So it really is just a matter of training the mechanism.
Exactly.
So it's less about having a gift and more about putting in the reps. Because I think a lot of people, myself included sometimes, fall into the trap of thinking you have a good ear for languages or you don't.
That's a huge myth.
Right. And if you don't have this magical good ear, well, you're just doomed to always need subtitles.
Yeah.
But the core thesis we're looking at today completely rejects that, doesn't
It
it?
completely throws that out the window.
Improving your English listening is entirely a matter of training your ears and your brain. It's a muscle. And today, we're going to talk about exactly how to work out that muscle.
It is absolutely a muscle. The idea of the language gene is largely a myth that people use to excuse their own frustration. Anyone can train their ear to recognize the phonetic patterns of English.
Okay, let's unpack this and get right into the actual strategies. I want to start with the power of immersion and routine, because the very first point in the guide, and it explicitly calls this the most important step of all, is simply this: listen every day.
Which sounds obvious.
It does sound obvious, but I feel like there's a catch here. When people hear study every day, they usually picture themselves chained to a desk.
They do, and that is where most learners burn out before they even really begin. What we really need to highlight here is the incredibly low barrier to entry.
How low are we talking?
We are talking about just 10 or 15 minutes a day. That's the recommendation from the text.
Just 10 minutes.
Just 10 minutes. And the psychology behind that is fascinating. When people decide they want to improve a language, they usually get a sudden burst of motivation. They think, right, I'm going to master English. I'm going to sit down and listen to English podcasts for 4 hours straight this Sunday.
Oh, I have definitely done the Sunday binge study session. You feel so productive for about an hour, and then your brain just turns to mush.
Exactly. And neurologically, your brain does not acquire language effectively through massive, infrequent data dumps.
It's like cramming for a test you forget the next day.
It's exactly like that. Or it's like going to the gym. You can't just go to the gym once a month, work out for 9 hours straight, and expect to get fit. You'll just get injured.
You'd be sore for a week and never go back.
Right. Language acquisition requires consistent, repeated exposure to keep those new neural pathways warm. Getting the brain used to English sounds requires a daily touch point. 10 to 15 minutes is completely manageable for anyone, no matter how busy your life is.
You can definitely find 10 minutes.
Everyone has 10 minutes.
And the beauty of living in the modern world is that you have a million ways to get those 10 minutes. You don't need a textbook CD-ROM anymore. You've got podcasts, YouTube videos, audiobooks, streaming radio, basically anything you want.
The resources are endless.
But I want to ask you about something that trips a lot of beginners up. You sit down for your 10 minutes, you put on an English podcast, and you don't understand 90% of it.
Right.
The guide says that at first you might only understand a few words, and that this is perfectly okay. But how do you reconcile that? Because it feels like a failure if you listen to 10 minutes of audio and only catch the word hamburger.
It feels like a failure because our school systems have conditioned us to believe that anything less than 100% comprehension on a test is a bad grade.
That's so true.
But expectation management is the most vital skill a language learner can develop. When you turn on that English podcast for the first time, your immediate goal is not comprehension. Let me say that again. Your goal is not to understand what they are saying.
That feels so counterintuitive. If I'm not trying to understand, what am I doing?
You're doing ear training. If you go in expecting to understand every sentence, you are going to get angry, you're going to feel stupid, and you're going to quit on day 2.
Which happens to so many people.
Exactly. When you first start listening, you are simply letting your brain hear the rhythm of the language. You are listening to the intonation, how the pitch goes up at the end of a question, or how it drops at the end of a statement.
Just the melody of it.
And the melody, yes. You're listening to the stress, noticing which words are spoken louder than others. You are familiarizing yourself with the music of the language, the translation, and the exact meaning of every word. That comes much, much later in the process.
It's like when you listen to a totally new genre of music for the first time. Let's say you've never listened to heavy metal or classical jazz.
A great example.
The first time you hear it, it just sounds like a wall of chaotic noise. But if you listen to it 10 minutes a day for a month, suddenly your brain starts pulling it apart. You hear the bass line, you notice the hi-hat, you hear the melody. The music didn't change. Your brain's ability to process that specific frequency of information changed.
That is a perfect analogy. Your brain is building the acoustic scaffolding required to hold the vocabulary later.
Okay, so 10 minutes a day is the baseline, but we want to accelerate this, which brings us to another really practical piece of advice. This is point number 12 in the material, which pairs beautifully with this daily habit, making listening a part of your daily life through multitasking.
Habit stacking.
Yes.
If you want to build a new habit, the absolute easiest way to do it is to attach it to an existing routine. If you try to carve out a brand new dedicated 30-minute block of study time in an already busy schedule, you'll find excuses to skip it.
Right, because life happens. You get tired, the kids need something, the boss calls.
Always something.
But the multitasking approach bypasses that entirely. Think about all the dead time in a typical day. Walking the dog, doing the dishes, cooking dinner, folding laundry, commuting on the train. You're doing these things anyway. Your hands are busy, but your ears are completely free.
And the underlying mechanics of why this works are really compelling. The more English you hear, the more natural it becomes. What's happening on a subconscious level is that your brain is constantly running this background pattern recognition software.
Even if I'm not paying attention.
Even if you aren't paying 100% active attention, say you have English playing in your headphones while you chop onions, your brain is still absorbing phonetic data. You are flooding your environment with the target language.
That's fascinating.
By doing that, you're feeding that background software. Eventually, after enough exposure, the brain starts recognizing common words automatically. It stops being this manual, laborious process of translating in your head.
Like, okay, you said apple. Apple means the red fruit.
Right. It skips that step entirely and shifts to an automatic, intuitive understanding where you just hear apple and picture the fruit instantly.
That shift from manual translation to automatic recognition is basically the holy grail for anyone learning a language. It's that moment where you stop translating and start just understanding.
It's a great feeling.
But to get to that holy grail without burning yourself out along the way, we really have to talk about the type of content you're choosing. It is incredibly easy to get overwhelmed, which moves us into the second major theme of our discussion today: controlling the input to avoid frustration.
This is where so many people make mistakes.
I want to highlight a specific warning the guide gives about video content. It explicitly warns that watching long videos can be incredibly tiring for beginners.
Yes, and this is where a lot of ambitious learners make a critical error. They think, I want to learn English, so I'm going to watch a 2-hour Hollywood movie in English tonight.
What's wrong with that, though? Shouldn't a movie be fun and engaging?
It is fun, but listening to a foreign language requires a massive amount of cognitive energy. We talked about how the brain has to process sounds, map them to vocabulary, and extract meaning.
Right.
That is a heavy, heavy lift. If you try to maintain that level of intense focus for a 2-hour movie as a beginner, your brain will simply fatigue, usually within about 20 minutes.
Really? That fast?
Oh, yeah. After that, you will hit cognitive overload. You'll stop actively listening, and you'll just start passively hearing noise while you stare at the pretty pictures on the screen. You aren't learning anymore, you're just surviving the experience.
That perfectly describes my experience trying to watch French cinema. So if a 2-hour movie is too much, what is the alternative? Because we still want to use video, right? It's highly visual, which helps with context.
The alternative is scaling the input to match your brain's endurance. Focus on videos that are just 3 to 5 minutes long, just a tiny, bite-sized piece of content.
3 to 5 minutes. That almost feels too short. You might think, how much can I really learn in 3 minutes?
You can learn significantly more from 3 minutes than you can from 2 hours because of the strategy of repetition. Short videos allow you to stay entirely focused at maximum cognitive capacity for the full duration of the video.
Because your brain doesn't have time to get tired.
Exactly. But crucially, and this is the real secret, because it's only 3 minutes long, you can watch it multiple times in one sitting.
Ah, I see. You can't reasonably watch a 2-hour movie 5 times in a row.
No, nobody has time for that.
But you can easily watch a 3-minute video 5 times.
Exactly. And repetition is where the actual cementing of knowledge happens. The first time you watch a 3-minute video, you're just trying to grasp the general situation. Who are these people? Where are they?
Get in the vibe.
Right. The second time, you start catching the verbs. The third time, you start noticing the adjectives or the specific way they pronounce a certain phrase. By the 5th time, your brain has essentially mapped out the entire audio landscape of that specific video. You have extracted every ounce of learning from that small package. You simply cannot achieve that level of deep, repetitive processing with a long piece of media.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's about depth, not breadth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another way people totally sabotage themselves, and this is a classic trap we've probably all fallen into, is jumping straight into fast native conversations.
It's so tempting.
You want to sound like a local, right? You want to sound cool and fluent. So you think you should only listen to native speakers talking at their normal rapid-fire pace. But trying to do that on day one is just asking for intense frustration.
It's the equivalent of trying to ride a motorcycle on the highway before you've learned how to balance on a bicycle with coining wheels. Native speech is incredibly messy.
Messy how?
Well, native speakers don't speak like textbooks. We blend words together, we drop syllables entirely, we use localized slang, and we speak at a velocity that completely masks the individual phonetic components of the language.
It's all just a blur.
Think about a common English phrase like, "What are you doing?" In a textbook, that's 4 distinct words. What are you doing? But in reality, a native speaker says, "What you doing?"
What you doing? Exactly. If your brain is desperately searching its mental dictionary for whatcha, it's going to crash. Because whatcha isn't a word. It's a collision of 3 words.
Precisely. It's a linguistic collision. And if you start your listening journey by only listening to those collisions, you are denying yourself the chance to learn the foundational building blocks of the words themselves.
You can't deconstruct what you don't know.
If you don't know what are, and you sound like individually, you have no hope of reverse engineering whatcha. That is why it is absolutely imperative to start with slow English.
Taking the training wheels off one at a time. I want to point out exactly what the guide says this slowing down achieves, because it highlights 3 specific things you can suddenly hear when the speed is reduced: pronunciation, word endings, and sentence structure.
Those are the big 3.
Can we break those down?
Why?
Why are those 3 things so important to isolate?
Let's start with pronunciation. When audio is artificially slowed down, or when a teacher is speaking deliberately slowly, you can finally hear how the vowels and consonants are actually being formed in the mouth.
You hear the shape of the word.
Right. You can hear the difference between the short I in ship and the long E in sheep, which in fast speech sound almost identical to an untrained ear. Next, word endings. In English, word endings carry a massive amount of grammatical weight.
They really do.
Is there a plural S at the end of that noun? Is there a past tense ed at the end of that verb?
And native speakers are terrible at enunciating those endings. Half the time, the ed just gets swallowed.
Exactly. In fast English, those tiny functional sounds disappear into the breath. In slow English, they become obvious. You train your ear to expect them.
And what about the third one? Sentence structure.
When the words have space between them, you can hear the architecture of the thought. You can hear where the subject is, where the verb is, and how the prepositions link things together.
It's like seeing the blueprint of the house.
Yes. Once your brain successfully maps those structures in slow motion, it builds a template. Then, when someone speaks quickly later on, your brain recognizes the template, even if the individual words are blurry.
It's a lot like learning an instrument. If you want to play a really complicated piano piece, you don't start at 120 beats per minute. Your fingers will just tangle.
No, you'd sound terrible.
You have to play it at 60 beats per minute. You play it slow enough that your brain and your fingers know exactly where to go. You only speed it up once the slow version is completely effortless.
That's a brilliant way to look at it. Fluency is just slow practice sped up over time.
Now, keeping with this idea of controlling your input, there's another massive hurdle with English specifically. English isn't just one monolithic uniform sound. It is spoken all over the globe, which means a truly dizzying array of different accents.
It's a very widespread language.
And this brings us to point number 6 in our exploration. You've got American English, British English, Australian, South African, Irish, Scottish, and that's before you even get into regional dialects within those countries.
Yeah.
A Texan sounds very different from a New Yorker, who sounds very different from someone in London.
The global reality of English is wonderful, but it adds a significant layer of complexity for a beginner, because each of those variations has distinct vowel sounds, completely different rhythmic cadences, and sometimes entirely different vocabulary words for the exact same object.
Like an elevator versus a lift.
Exactly. For someone just starting out, trying to decipher a posh British accent on Monday, a deep Southern American accent on Tuesday, and a fast-paced Australian accent on Wednesday is a recipe for total neurological confusion.
It sounds like a headache.
It is. Your brain is trying to build a map, and you keep changing the coordinates.
I can imagine. You finally figure out how an American says water, and then a British person says it, and it sounds like a completely different language. So how do we handle this without getting completely lost? The advice here is actually very methodical. It suggests a stepped approach. Start with one accent first, pick one, stick with it, and only slowly explore others later.
It's about establishing a baseline. You need to train your brain to recognize the standard phonetic rules of one specific dialect first, so you have a solid foundation to stand on.
Give me an example of how that works.
Let's say you decide to focus entirely on standard American English. You listen to American news, American podcasts, American YouTubers. You do that until your brain has a highly reliable, predictable map of how American English sounds.
And once you have that map,
Once that baseline is established, your brain can use it as a reference point to understand variations. So a year later, when you finally introduce a British accent, your brain isn't starting from scratch and panicking.
it knows what it's comparing it to.
Exactly. It's doing something very sophisticated. It's taking the new British sound and comparing it to the American baseline it already knows. It says, okay, when they say this word, they drop the R sound at the end. I can adjust for that.
It's really smart.
You are just calculating the differences from a known center. This makes your overall listening skills incredibly resilient and adaptable in the long run.
Establish the baseline first. Build the house before you try to paint it 3 different colors. I love that.
Yeah.
And you know what helps establish that baseline a million times faster? Actually giving a damn about what you were listening to.
Yes.
Which is a perfect segue to point number 9. Listen to topics you actually enjoy. The premise here is incredibly simple. If you like the topic, learning English becomes easier.
It sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, but it represents a profoundly important psychological shift for most learners. Too often, language learners torture themselves.
They really do.
They force themselves to listen to incredibly dry academic news broadcasts about global economics or incredibly stilted, boring textbook dialogues about a fictional character going to the bank.
Hello, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
I would like to open a checking account.
Right. Nobody wants to listen to that.
Nobody. It's awful.
They do it because they think that's what proper, serious studying is supposed to look like. It feels like medicine, so it must be good for you. But here is the neurological reality. If you are bored, your brain is actively looking for an excuse to stop paying attention.
It just shuts down.
It will seize on any distraction. The language barrier just becomes another reason to tune out.
But if you flip that and you pick topics you're genuinely passionate about, the whole dynamic changes. The guide suggests things like space and the universe, technology, history, travel, or even just casual daily conversations.
Find your niche.
If you are a massive history buff, don't listen to English banking dialogues. Listen to an English podcast about the Roman Empire. If you love baking, go watch the Great British Baking Show.
The underlying mechanism at play here is curiosity. When you are curious, your brain acts completely differently. Curiosity is a powerful cognitive enhancer.
I've noticed that. Time just flies.
When you genuinely want to know what the speaker is going to say next, because you actually care about how the Roman Empire fell, or you really want to know how to bake that cake, you will push through the linguistic difficulty. Your desire for the information overrides your frustration with the language.
You stop focusing on the English and you start focusing on the story.
Precisely. You will focus harder. You will try to deduce the meaning of unknown words from context clues because you need to know what happens next. And crucially, you will retain the new vocabulary much, much better because it is attached to an emotion and an interest you already possess.
That makes perfect sense.
Emotion and genuine interest are the glue that makes a new language stick permanently to your memory.
Okay. I feel like we've established an amazing foundation here. We've talked about the daily habit, keeping it manageable. We've talked about curating the right kind of input, keeping it short, slowing it down, sticking to one accent, and picking topics that don't put you to sleep.
The groundwork is laid.
But now it's time to hit the gym.
Time for the heavy lifting.
Exactly.
Yep.
We are moving into the third major phase of our exploration today, active training techniques. This is the workout phase. The strategies we just talked about were largely about setting up your environment. Now we are looking at highly specific, active exercises designed to really accelerate your progress.
These are the game changers.
And I want to start with one that might feel a little like cheating at first. Point number 3, listen and read at the same time.
It's not cheating at all. In fact, neurologically speaking, it is an incredibly powerful method. The exercise is very straightforward. You take a short piece of audio that has a transcript. First, you listen to the audio on its own, just using your ears. Then you listen to that exact same audio a second time. But this time, you read the transcript or the subtitles while the person is speaking.
Now, I look at that 2-step process, listening and then reading along, and I can hear a skeptic saying, aren't we just giving ourselves a crutch?
Yeah.
If I'm reading, I'm not really practicing my listening, am I? How does this actually help the ear?
It helps because it bridges a massive, very specific gap that almost all adult language learners face. As we discussed at the very beginning, your reading comprehension is almost always vastly superior to your listening comprehension.
Because we've spent so much time with books.
Right. You have a large visual vocabulary. You know what the word comfortable looks like printed on a page. You know exactly what it means. But when a native speaker says it quickly in a sentence, it doesn't sound like comfortable. It sounds more like comfortable. They smash the syllables together.
Right, so the sound hits your ear, and your brain says, I have no idea what comfortable is. That's a new word, even though you actually know the word perfectly well.
Exactly. The knowledge is in your brain, but the auditory trigger doesn't match the visual file you have stored. By listening and reading simultaneously, you are forcing your brain to link your strong visual vocabulary with your weaker auditory processing.
They're connecting the dots.
You are consciously telling your brain, hey, this weird blurry sound you just heard, it is actually this familiar, safe word you already know.
You're literally building a neurological bridge between the eye and the ear.
Yes. And over time, after doing this repeatedly, those bridges become permanent. Your brain updates its internal dictionary to include the messy spoken version of the word. Eventually, you don't need the text anymore. You hear comfortable and your brain instantly recognizes it.
That is amazing. It's using your strongest skill, reading, to physically pull up your weakest skill, listening. But speaking of reading while listening, we have to talk about subtitles, because point number 7 dives into how to use subtitles wisely. And there's a massive warning attached to this. Subtitles can be a helpful bridge, but if you aren't careful, they become a permanent crutch.
They absolutely can, and it's a very easy trap to fall into.
I have a confession to make. Even in my native language, I started turning subtitles on a few years ago because TV dialogue mixing got so muddy, and now I literally cannot turn them off. If I turn them off, I feel like I can't hear the movie.
That is incredibly common now.
And worse, I realized recently that I spend the entire movie staring at the bottom inch of the screen. I'm not even looking at the actors' faces anymore. I'm just speed reading a movie.
That is exactly what happens. Your brain is an incredibly efficient machine. It will always take the path of least resistance to gather information. For an adult, reading is a highly automated, low-effort path.
While listening is hard work.
Decoding complex audio, especially in a foreign language, is a high-effort path. If you give your brain the option to read the subtitles, it will shut down the auditory decoding process almost entirely. You will trick yourself into thinking you understood the spoken English when in reality you just read the text and ignored the sound.
So, if we know our brains are lazy and will cheat if we let them, how do we use subtitles effectively without falling into that trap? The guide lays out a very specific 3-step method, and I want to walk through it because it feels like a total game changer.
Walk us through it.
Step 1. Listen to the audio completely blind without any subtitles. Step 2, listen to the exact same audio again, but this time turn the subtitles on. Step 3, turn the subtitles back off and listen one more time.
Taking the training wheels off, putting them back on to check your balance, and then taking them off again. It's brilliant because of how it manages your cognitive load. Let's look at what happens in the brain during each step.
Okay, let's break it down.
In step 1, without subtitles, you are forcing your ears to do the heavy lifting. You are struggling. You are guessing. You are actively trying to extract meaning from the raw, unassisted audio. You will probably fail to understand a lot of it, and that's the point. You are identifying your blind spots.
Then step 2 comes in. You turn the subtitles on. It's the reveal.
Right. Step 2 is where you get the answers to the test you just took. You see the words you missed. You clarify the confusion. You realize that the weird sound you couldn't decipher was actually just 2 simple words blended together. You link the sound to the text, building that bridge we just talked about.
And then the magic happens in step 3. You turn the text off and you listen again. Why is that final blind listen so crucial?
Because in step 3, the mystery is gone. Your brain already knows what is being said and what the context is. Now, when you listen without the text, your brain can map the exact known meaning directly onto the pure auditory input.
Because it's fresh in your memory.
You aren't guessing anymore. You are training the brain to actually hear and understand the audio on its own merits, rather than just passively reading along. It creates a perfect, self-contained workout loop for your auditory processing.
I love that. Test, verify, integrate. Now, if we want to take that workout to an even higher intensity, we move to point number 4. This is an exercise called shadowing. You listen to a sentence, pause the audio, and then try to repeat it out loud exactly as you heard it. Let me give you the example sentence they use. The sentence is, Learning English takes time and patience.
So, to do this exercise properly, you would listen to the native speaker say, learning English takes time and patience. You hit pause, and immediately, while the echo of their voice is still in your head, you say it out loud. But you don't just read it in your own voice, you mimic them.
Like an actor.
Like an actor, you try to match their rhythm, their tone, the exact way they pronounce the T in time. You shadow their delivery completely.
But wait, if we are focusing on improving our listening skills, why are we suddenly doing a speaking exercise? Does talking out loud actually help your ears?
It absolutely does. The connection between the mouth and the ear is incredibly deep. To accurately reproduce a complex sound with your own vocal cords, you have to listen to it with an extraordinarily high degree of precision.
You really have to tune in.
Think about an impressionist trying to mimic a famous celebrity's voice. They don't just listen to the words the celebrity says, they listen to the microcadences, the breath, the pitch. Shadowing forces you to listen actively, not passively.
You can't mimic what you haven't fully heard.
Exactly. You aren't just listening for the general meaning anymore. You are listening to the exact vowel sounds. You are listening to the rising and falling of the intonation. You notice exactly where the stress falls on the word patience. By forcing your physical vocal cords to recreate that specific acoustic pattern, you are dramatically sharpening your brain's auditory perception of that pattern.
You are physicalizing the language. You're
Yeah.
taking it out of the abstract realm of your head and forcing it to live in your mouth, your throat, your breath.
Yeah.
It builds physical muscle memory that reinforces the auditory memory.
It's an incredibly powerful feedback loop.
Okay, we have one more active training technique in this section, and I'm not going to lie, this one sounds a bit brutal, but the payoff is apparently huge. Point number 10, practice dictation. The drill is very simple to explain. Listen to a short audio sentence and write down exactly, word for word, what you hear.
It is brutal. And to be fair, the guide is very honest about this. It admits right up front that at first this will feel incredibly difficult. And it will. Dictation is the ultimate unforgiving test of your listening comprehension.
No more guessing.
There is nowhere to hide. When you're just casually listening to a podcast, you can nod along, catch the main nouns, and pretend you got the gist of it. Dictation strips away that illusion. You have to account for every single word, every preposition, every tiny article.
Why do this to ourselves then? If it's so frustrating, what is the specific benefit that makes the pain worth it?
The benefit is that dictation forces you to bypass your brain's natural autocorrect. Our brains are incredibly efficient, which means they are lazy. When we listen to language, our brains naturally filter out what they deem to be unimportant structural words to save energy. Words like in, on, at, a, the.
We just skip right past them.
We focus on the big, meaning-heavy nouns and verbs. Native speakers also gloss over these small words incredibly quickly. They blend them into the surrounding consonants, so your brain just skips right over them.
Right. If someone says, I'll meet you at the store, the at that just becomes a tiny little the sound tucked in the middle.
Precisely. And when you are forced to write the sentence down exactly as it was spoken, you suddenly realize you have a massive blind spot. You write down, I'll meet your store, you look at it and you realize the grammar is wrong. You miss the small sounds. Dictation takes a microscope and focuses it entirely on those tiny, vital, connective linguistic details that hold the language together.
It exposes the gaps in your hearing. And the crucial last step of this drill is the comparison. You write down what you think you heard, and then you look at the actual correct transcript. That moment of comparison, seeing the gap between what the speaker actually said and what your brain hallucinated, that's where the calibration happens. That's where you learn.
It's pure, unfiltered feedback. It's difficult, but a few minutes of dictation a day will sharpen your ear faster than almost anything else.
All right, we have covered the daily habits. We've covered how to curate your input. We've gone through a rigorous boot camp of active exercises, reading while listening, the 3-step subtitle, method, shadowing, and dictation. Now, as we move into the final major section of our exploration today, section 4, we are going to shift gears entirely.
This is where it all comes together.
We are moving away from physical exercises and drills, and we are going to talk about a fundamental shift in your mental framework. It's about changing how you process the information you hear. And honestly, point number 5 might be the single biggest relief in the entire guide.
It is absolutely a paradigm shift for anyone who has been struggling.
I want everyone listening to really absorb this. The guide states very plainly, you do not need to understand every single word. Let that sink in. You do not need to understand every word. In fact, even native speakers only focus on the keywords.
It completely flips the script on how we are traditionally taught languages in a classroom setting. In a school, the focus is almost always on achieving 100% perfect comprehension. You get tested on every vocabulary word, every grammar rule, so learners develop this perfectionist anxiety.
You feel like you have to catch everything.
The second they hear a word they don't recognize in a spoken sentence, they freeze. Their brain stops processing new input because it's stuck trying to decode that one missing word, and the rest of the conversation just flies right past them.
But in real-world spoken communication, language is incredibly redundant. We use way more words than are strictly necessary to convey an idea. The guide provides a really brilliant everyday example to illustrate this difference between the structure of a sentence and the meaning of a sentence. I want us to spend a minute breaking this down because it's so illuminating.
Let's hear it.
The example sentence is, I went to the supermarket yesterday because we needed milk and bread.
Now, put yourself in the shoes of a beginner. You're trying to translate every single word in real time. Your brain hears I, okay, that's me. Went, okay, past tense of go. 2, preposition, the article. By the time you are trying to figure out the grammatical function of the word because, the speaker is already 3 sentences ahead of you talking about what they bought.
You're drowning in the grammar of the sentence.
You're lost in the weeds. But if you look at that same sentence, I went to the supermarket yesterday because we needed milk and bread. How many of those words do you actually need to hear to understand the story? The guide points out that you really only need 4 words.
Just 4. Supermarket, yesterday. Milk, bread.
Supermarket, yesterday. Milk, bread.
Exactly.
If you manage to extract just those 4 key words from that entire stream of audio, your brain is more than capable of connecting the dots. You understand the context. Someone went to the supermarket yesterday, and it involved milk and bread. You don't actually need to hear I went to the or because we needed...
They're just filler.
Those are purely structural words holding the nouns together. The actual heavy lifting of the communication, the story, is carried entirely by those 4 key words.
The advice here is to consciously train your brain to catch important words. If you can let go of the perfectionism, if you can stop panicking when you miss a preposition and just scan the audio stream for the meaning-carrying nouns and verbs, your listening comprehension is going to skyrocket. More importantly, your stress levels are going to plummet. You'll stop feeling like you're failing, and you'll start participating in the context.
It's about shifting from listening for grammar to listening for meaning. Native speakers do this naturally. If we're in a noisy restaurant, I'm probably only hearing 60% of the actual phonetic data coming out of your mouth. The rest is drowned out by plates clinking and other people talking.
But you still understand me.
Because I don't panic. My brain just catches the keywords and hallucinates the rest of the grammar based on context. Learners need to give themselves permission to do exactly the same thing.
Give yourself permission to guess. I think that brings up a really important underlying theme to all of this. We could talk about shadowing and dictation and keywords all day long. But learning a language is deeply emotional. It's frustrating. It hits your ego. Even with all these fantastic techniques, there will still be days where you turn on a podcast and it sounds like absolute gibberish and it feels completely impossible.
And we have to acknowledge that reality. The guide addresses this head-on in point number 11, which is simply, be patient with yourself. I love that it includes this because it normalizes the emotional struggle in a very validating way. It actually quotes the internal monologue that almost every language learner has had. Why can't I understand English?
It's a question born out of pure exhaustion and frustration. You feel like you're putting in the work, but your brain just won't cooperate.
Learning a language as an adult is inherently a vulnerable experience. You are an intelligent, articulate adult in your native language. You are used to expressing highly complex, nuanced thoughts, making jokes, arguing effectively. And suddenly when you try to speak or listen to this new language, you are essentially reduced to a toddler's level of comprehension.
It's really humbling.
You can't express your personality, you misunderstand simple questions. It is a massive blow to the ego. It is uncomfortable. But the perspective offered here is so calming and realistic.
It reminds the learner that listening simply takes time. There is no biological shortcut for building neural pathways. It requires thousands of repetitions. And a detail that I found incredibly reassuring is that it explicitly notes that even advanced learners sometimes miss words.
It's true. Fluency is not perfection. Fluency is just the ability to quickly recover when you inevitably miss a word. Missing words is a completely normal part of the human communicative experience, even for native speakers. The goal is not to never misunderstand someone. The goal is to build a strong enough foundation that when you do misunderstand, you don't panic.
The important thing isn't achieving immediate perfection. The important thing is just showing up the next day. Consistent practice over time.
Consistency will always beat intensity. A steady drip of water hollows out the stone.
So let's step back and look at the big picture. What does this all mean for you, the listener, as you continue on your own journey with English or whatever language you are currently tackling? Let's synthesize the core philosophy we've extracted from our session today. The biggest takeaway, the one I really hope you internalize, is that improving your listening comprehension has absolutely nothing to do with natural talent. Let go of the idea that you are just bad at languages. It is entirely a systematic process of practice, strategic input, and consistency.
It is a mechanical process of training your brain to recognize new acoustic patterns. That's all it is.
Let's quickly recap the essential actionable steps we've covered. First, build a habit. Listen every day, even if it is just 10 or 15 minutes. Don't rely on willpower to carve out extra time. Weave it into the dead time of your daily routines, like cooking, commuting, or folding laundry.
Second, be fiercely protective of your input. Start slow. Use short, 3-minute videos so you can utilize repetition without fatigue. Pick one specific accent to establish a strong baseline before you explore others. Utilize slow English materials to hear the hidden mechanics of the language. And please, for your own sanity, choose topics you are actually curious about.
Third, do the active workouts. Don't just listen passively all the time. Challenge yourself. Listen while reading the transcript to bridge your visual and auditory vocabularies. Use the 3-step subtitle method, blind assisted blind, to avoid using text as a crutch. Practice shadowing by mimicking sentences out loud to physically map the sounds, and occasionally subject yourself to the brutal honesty of dictation to catch those tiny structural words.
And finally, profoundly shift your expectations. Stop trying to translate every single word in real time. Scan the audio for the meaning-carrying keywords and let your brain fill in the blanks. And above all else, be relentlessly patient with yourself.
There is a final, wonderfully encouraging reminder from the source material that I think sums this entire journey up beautifully. It says, every minute you spend listening to English is helping your brain grow. You are literally, biologically, forging new neural pathways in your head. Even on the days when you turn off the podcast and you feel like you didn't understand a single useful thing, your brain was still absorbing the acoustic data. The structural growth is happening beneath the surface completely invisibly as long as you continue to put in the time.
It is a journey of microscopic daily growth. You won't notice it day to day, but if you look back a year from now, the progress will astound you.
It really is an incredible process. And before we wrap up our exploration today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. It's a bit of a pivot, but I think it's fascinating. We have spent this entire time discussing the intense focus required to learn a new language. We talked about actively listening for keywords rather than getting bogged down in noise. We talked about focusing intently on small sounds and paying deep attention to the rhythm and emotion of the speaker. And we talked about having profound, extending patience with the messy, imperfect process of trying to understand someone who communicates differently than you do. Think about the incredible level of grace and active presence that requires.
It's a very empathetic way of listening.
It is. Now ask yourself, how might applying these exact same focused, patient, active listening techniques change the way you communicate with the people in your life, even in your own native language? What if you listen to your partner or your friends or your colleagues with the exact same intent to truly understand their keywords instead of just waiting for your turn to speak? It's something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive. We wish you the absolute best on your language learning journey. Be kind to yourself, keep showing up, keep listening, and we will see you next time.